Hello, and thanks for joining us for Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration. I'm Alexis Avila, educator, online entrepreneur, and founder of tutoring test prep firm Prepped and Polished, and we're broadcasting today in South Natick, Massachusetts. Prepped and Polished is your destination for groundbreaking insight from today's most influential educators, leaders, and minds on the planet. Our show is brought to you today by Plan for College Videos. Nationally known college planning expert Paul Hemphill has a wonderful series of videos, over 100 of them, and his videos ask all kinds of questions with answers that parents don't know to ask. Parents don't know what they don't know, and the frustration ends with his videos. To learn more about them, planning-for-college.com/videos. And get to know the Prepped and Polished community. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. Just type Prepped and Polished. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today. Joining our show today is Halley Shefler, founder and president of ArtsBridge, an educational consulting firm which specializes in connecting talented students with educational opportunities in the visual and performing arts. Halley completed her undergrad degree at Sarah Lawrence College and earned a master's at Boston University. She's an accomplished flutist, has performed with Boston Symphony Orchestra at Tanglewood, and before starting ArtsBridge, Halley served as Dean of Admission for the Boston Conservator for 11 years. And Halley's going to talk to us about what motivated her to create ArtsBridge, and tell us what it takes for talented students to get into those top performing and visual art schools. To our listeners, you can submit a question at any time. It's radio@preppedandpolished.com. Always appreciate hearing from you. Halley, thank you for joining us on Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration. How are you today?
I'm good, Alexis. Thank you for having me on today.
Awesome. So, I'd like to find out first just a little bit about your background, like where you came from or where you come from, and because a lot of our listeners are teens, what you were like as a teen.
Well, I come originally from Montreal in Canada, and I grew up in New York in the city, right in Greenwich Village, actually. And as a teen, I was a very serious musician, very into the art scene in New York and around the country, and was very much into long hair, long skirts, and long earrings.
Nice. Montreal is one of my favorite places. I go like once a year. So.
Great bagels, and yeah. Great place.
Well, New York or Montreal, which bagels has the best, would you say?
I think Montreal, hands down. New York are bigger, but the bagels in Montreal and the smoked meat in Montreal are really quite unique.
Perfect. Now, who were some major influences for you growing up?
Major influences for me were probably some of my teachers. I went to High School of Music and Art, which is now LaGuardia High School for the Arts in New York. So some of my teachers in school, some of my orchestra conductors, Boston Symphony, a lot of them were mentors just because all my years at Tanglewood. And that's probably about it. I was a little bit young for the whole, I wasn't totally connected with what was going on in the world. And of course, that was after the Vietnam War when I became aware of the rest of the world. But, just being in New York and culturally and educationally, I feel like I had a pretty good sort of idea of what was happening everywhere. Everything is represented in New York. So, I'm glad I grew up in such an open place where people could really free to be who they were.
Nice. And you're an accomplished musician, a flutist who has played with Boston Symphony. Now, did you start playing flute as a child, and have you kept it up?
Well, I was an accomplished flutist. Okay. I started when I was 9, and I kept it up seriously, through elementary, middle school, high school, college, graduate school, and then quite a bit after that. I recently played at a friend's wedding, but
okay.
it's not as easy as it, even holding the flute up, your arms get tired if you're not used to it. But I very much, I always felt, as much as I loved playing the flute, I always felt that there was something more that I wanted to do with my life, and it takes an incredible amount of dedication and alone time to sit in a practice room and practice those scales. And I was always kind of wanting to socialize and see what was happening with everybody and talk with everybody. So even though ensemble experience was great, and I'm very fortunate to have had done a lot of that work, in order to get a position in a major orchestra, which of course everybody wants, is something that takes a great deal of alone time, solitary time, practice time. And I'm also a little bit too much of a control freak to wait to be hired. So I just thought, I'm just gonna go kind of find my own dream, and and it's worked out beautifully for me. I'm lucky.
Awesome. So can you tell us a couple pivotal moments that brought you to today's chat, where you're one of the premier consultants for students looking into art schools, both performing and visual schools? Mm-hmm.
That's just such a great question, and I probably answer this question 5 or 6 times a day when I speak to new families, because most of our, even though we're based in Boston area like you are, most of our clients are not from the Boston area, from all over internationally and throughout the U.S.
Nice.
When I was director of admissions at the School of Music at Boston University before I was at Boston Conservatory, and I began to see this trend of students applying to schools and not getting in anywhere.
Okay.
And I, as a mother of 2 kids, one who's in college and one's an orchestral conductor, as an artist myself and as an admissions director myself, I just felt like, oh, this cannot happen. What's going on? And as I looked into this a little bit more, I realized that even though guidance counselors are remarkable people and they do everything they can, a lot of the schools just either don't have enough counselors or there is no focus on the art student. It's very, I think the A student, the B student, the student who is challenged in some other way, they get a lot of support. The athlete gets a lot of support. And then I realized, well, of course these kids are not getting in anywhere. They're just applying to the schools they've heard of, and the 5 or 6 schools, and everyone's applying to the same place. And as a result, it's the numbers, just the sheer numbers of kids applying is one thing that really just got in the way of students being accepted, but also in terms of preparation and what they need to know and who they need to know, and repertoire and songs and which pieces, and the same thing really goes for the visual arts schools as well. I thought, I need to continue to investigate this. So when I was at Boston Conservatory, a school I still love, I really believe in, I began to talk to some families about Boston Conservatory, but I realized that that particular school is perfect if that's who you are, to go to that kind of school, but it really isn't for everybody. And then I began to give people suggestions about some other schools, and I thought, I hope the president isn't hearing me say this, but I really felt like, listen, if this is not the right school for you, then this is what you should look at. And I love doing that. And then I started to talk to some consultants. I interviewed about 20 consultants all over the place with the same questions, just asking them did they like what they did and what their background was. And then I just started working with kids on this process and realized I thought students and families knew a lot more than they knew and know now, but how much people really don't know in order to be successful at this thing we call college admissions. And we have really made a very big dent through workshops, through consulting, and through our summer programs, whereas over and over again we hear students and families say, I can't believe what my experience would have been like if I didn't know all this. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that word out, and it's a lot of work, but the four of us, and we really love what we do.
Yeah, you can tell. Halley, can you tell us the services that ArtsBridge provides for students? There's a lot going on there, and what services don't you provide?
Okay, so we are very specific. We're a very niche consulting firm in that there has to be a hook for the visual and or for performing arts. Okay. And when I started this in 2008, I thought, oh my God, I'm limiting myself. We'll never get any clients. But it actually turned out to be having a niche is kind of the way to go, because you can't. I know a lot of really great consultants out there, and then when you look at what their specialties are, they're like 8 things listed there. They're, and maybe they really are great at everything, but so I decided that as long as students have this hook of the visual and performing arts, and they're open to the fact that it's either going to be, they're going to apply as a major or as a minor, or doing this on the side, then they can work with us. So for example, if somebody comes to us and says, they want to be they want to be, a concert violinist, and they want to go to a place like Juilliard. And what families have to understand is, yes, that would be amazing to be able to go to Juilliard and be a concert violinist and all that. But if you don't have those kind of skills to get into the kind of program like Juilliard, you're probably not going to get it. It's probably not going to happen. And so maybe what you have to do is go to a school that is either not as high up the ladder, or is a great Bachelor of Arts program where you can study with a great violin teacher and do it that way. So we make sure our families are open, because we do assessments to help families and students figure out where they are in this process, or nationally figure out where their artistic level is, to be open to that process. So what we do is we do 3 major things. Most of what we do is our college consulting, where we work with students beginning in 10th, 11th grade, even though we have a lot of seniors who are contacting us right now. We will work with seniors too. It's just that it's getting late. Yeah. And so let's say typically junior, and we work with them on the entire college process, everything from an assessment at the beginning, where do you fit nationally, to the 22 pieces of writing, the essays, 2 waitlist contingencies. That's what we do. The other things we do is we offer audition workshops and other programs. We have one coming up in Boston on October 19th and one in New York on November 2nd. And we tend to do one a month, or one every 2 months throughout the U.S., where students can come in. And we then invite, they're all done regionally. So for our Boston audition workshop, we have the head of musical theater at Boston Conservatory, and we have an acting professor on the audition committee at Boston University. And in New York, we have the head of musical theater at Pace and the head of acting at Rutgers, Mason Gross. The students spend the entire day with us. They come in, they do their quote audition, then we divide them up with acting and musical theater, and then we switch that up, and they learn a lot in the day, what worked, what didn't work. They learn about repertoire and all that. And then we do our big summer program right now. We're only doing it in musical theater and acting. We move that around every year, and we're going to add other programs in music, in visual arts, in where students come and work with the faculty from the colleges who make the decisions, the artistic decisions, for 2 weeks. And highly competitive. You have to audition to get in, of course. And that too, it's just all about this connection with the colleges, and even the name ArtsBridge. We want to bridge the gap from high school to college. So that's the main thing we do. What we don't do is if somebody called me up and said, I want a list of schools that have fashion design, or I want a list of schools with the best acting programs. First of all, you can go online and do that somewhat. But it's an irresponsible thing to do for any consultant, because there's too much that goes into it. You know, academics do matter, grades and scores and artistic ability. And then we need to look at all that. We need to talk to people. We need to talk to guidance counselors. We need to really get to know the student to make sure we can recommend schools that we really stand by for these students. And it really works. We don't judge ourselves by, someone's asked me this once, do you judge yourselves by how many students get into Parsons, or how many get into Pratt, or how many get to Juilliard? And it couldn't be further from the truth. We want to teach families and institutions and guidance counselors and whomever what's out there and what it is that somebody needs to do to up their chances of getting in. And there are a lot of great schools out there, Alexis, I'm sure you know this, and
a lot
people
of homes
just don't know about them. There are so many schools that are dying to get these kids to offer money, but we need to keep moving them away from the colleges that everybody knows about and everybody's applying to, and really help them understand why you don't have to go to a specific school. You don't have to get a specific degree to, quote, make it, whatever that means.
Sure, absolutely. And now, one thing that was coming to my mind is, I'm sure you get a few students who come in with a huge ego that they can be the next Liza Minnelli,
right?
But their ability isn't really there. How do you talk to a student like that, who's kind of who wants to get into the Juilliard, but their ability isn't up to par with their confidence?
That's such a great question. Actually, those are my favorite kind of kids to work with, because there's a very important word, and it's yet. I have to understand, they have to understand, they're not there yet. They're not there yet. I'm very honest with them. People know, anyone who knows me know, I will never deceive anybody, for lack of a better word, about what they have to offer. And it largely is because they just haven't had the training yet to do what they want to do. So they can still apply anywhere they want. I'm just an advisor. That's all I am. If you want to apply to Juilliard and Pace and Pratt and Harvard and Brown, then you go ahead. But Harvard and Brown and Pace and Pratt and those kind of schools will probably be what we consider a high stretch. Now, I think that it's very important for people to know that, you know, we're judging you from basically what we see, and we have a way to to compare you, for lack of a better word, to other people in your situation based on what you have to offer right now. But it doesn't mean that you can't transfer. It doesn't mean that you can't take a gap year. But nice. Right now, it doesn't look to us and to the people I work with, you know, in the colleges, that's where you are, and we hope we're wrong. Because if you want to go for it, go for it. But we hope you're wrong. We're usually right, but hey, you know, you never know. You never know. Sometimes somebody can be lucky.
Yeah, I like that. That's the way to go. And can you tell maybe a success story of or someone who comes to your mind, maybe a student who came into your office with odds against her to get into a school, but with a few tweaks to the application was able to land that kind of dream school?
I have a lot of kids like that.
I'm sure you do.
My favorite, I think my favorite is a student who has just graduated from Oberlin.
Nice.
Who had, definitely was on the spectrum. And he was this brilliant guy who just never quite got my sense of humor and didn't quite understand the nuances, and he wanted to double major at Oberlin in the Bachelor of Art, in the BA program and a Bachelor of Music, and he wanted to do both, and he wanted to do this at a lot of different schools, and he was a good player, not the most amazing player, but he was a really good player. Mm-hmm. But I just really worried about this student a little bit. So when it came to doing all the essays, he wrote some really brilliant essays still. One of them was called My Fishless Years, and he wrote about how he loves to fish, but he never caught anything, which was just like such a great essay. I still show that to people. And then he wrote the second essay about his special ed teacher. And his parents were both working at one of the most prestigious schools in the Boston area. I'm sure you know what that is. And they were horrified, thinking that, what? You're going to tell Brown and Oberlin and all these schools that you are in special ed? Because, of course, as we know, kids who are special and have different issues, whatever, that's nobody's business. He wanted to, because this person really changed his life. And when he was in ninth grade, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore because of the stigma. And I thought he should keep the essay. I thought it was really brilliant. Okay, so P.S. and he got in everywhere. And It's just the kind of thing that was the perfect example is let the colleges know who you are. Don't say you want to see your name in lights. Don't say you want to be in a major orchestra. Who really are you? And this is who he was. And we meet for coffee sometimes when he's in town, and he's, loves to bake and all kinds of things. It was just one of these stories that will always stay with me. And the other story was a student from New Jersey who I was driving through New Jersey one day, and he really wanted to meet me with his mom, and I was in a hotel room, met them there, which is something like I never do. And he walked in and he wanted to sing for me. And it was like at the end of a long day. And, he just it was like, okay, sing for me. And he sung for me. And I thought, he told me where he wanted to apply and sung for me. And I thought, okay, he needs a lot of work. I thought that. And I thought, what should I do and all that. So anyway, we changed everything. We changed his teacher. We changed his list. We changed his trajectory. We changed everything. And he now is in one of the top two. He got into a bunch of programs that he never would have if he had and he says this, the mom is one of my favorite people. She's a reference for us. He didn't know about other schools out there, and their list became so realistic for him where he was. He's actually in school right now here in Boston, and it's perfect. He ended up where he should be. So these are families who, they listened, and people need to listen. We do know. We really do know. And we make sure that we stay in touch with colleges and counselors and really we want to work together to make this a success for the families, and it doesn't have to be this horrible process, which for a lot of kids, it's really not a fun process. So we laugh a lot and tease everybody a lot. And so those are two great stories of mine that I keep with me forever.
Yeah, those are amazing stories.
Thank you.
What are just a few tips that come to your mind for a talented high schooler looking to apply to a performing arts school? And then what are some things that maybe come to your mind that a talented high schooler should not do when applying to a performing arts school?
Okay, well, if you're applying to a performing arts school, you need to really make sure you understand what the requirements are for that school. So even just taking musical theater is not musical theater. So what a University of Michigan wants is going to be very different than what Pace wants and a Boston Conservatory will want. So you have to read the requirements. I do think that families who are thinking right now, it is so hard to find the information on websites. They are right, 100%. And I'm trying to come up with a way maybe where colleges can just have a splash page with everything on there that families need without having to search through everything. It's kind of like when you go into a grocery store and you just want milk, but you have to walk through all the aisles to just get the milk. Like, just have everything up front so people can see. So that's one thing. So the requirements. Deadlines are huge. There are some schools that have deadlines bunch of schools are doing this thing called pre-screen right now, where you have to basically send in an audition to get a live audition. And there's one school that has a deadline of, I won't say the school because they may have changed it, but last year it was October 23rd, which is a month from now. And there's nobody who is thinking it's something that early. So deadlines are very important. Audition material is very important. And proofreading the essay is critical, because spelling mistakes, there's no excuse for that now, especially with spell check and grammar check. That kind of thing, very important. And then also, be realistic. Don't just apply to the 10 or 12 most competitive schools. Be realistic about your choices. What people should not do is don't send in 14 letters of recommendation if the school only wants 2. Don't submit your application on the deadline. Don't submit your application on the deadline, because something will always happen. So if December 1st is the deadline, I know this from being in admissions offices, and my colleagues would say the same thing. Everybody waits to the last second, and there are often computer glitches. Apply early, because very often you have to apply before you can schedule your audition, and you are not going to get an audition spot if you don't apply early. I was going to say don't call the admissions office the day after you submit and say, did you get my material? They have your material. They're just probably in 50 boxes in the admissions office. So, you leave them alone a little bit. Don't be too much of a nudge. Don't be annoying about, did you get this? Did you get that? Don't have everybody in the world call to give a recommendation. In the performing arts, people worry about my clients. It's always about who should write recommendation, who should write recommendation. Most of us have never really seen a bad recommendation letter, so we don't take those overly seriously in the arts. And don't walk into an audition without having done your audition 5 or 6 times for family, for friends, anywhere you can. Right? Just don't do that, and don't forget about your physical appearance as well. You need to look, put together. It's not going to get you in. It could keep you out if you're wearing something where the buttons are off, or it's too short, or it's too low, or something like that. Like, you just need to be in your A game and really, look the part, because looks matter. I'm not saying everybody has to be drop dead beautiful. First impressions are huge. Yep.
And another thing, I'm going to go on a whim here, but probably best not to have your mom or dad call on your behalf, because they're looking for big boys and girls.
They are right. Don't have your parents call. You should call. Exactly. Don't have your parents waiting with you outside the audition room. That's a good one. Another tip that I give my families is, there are a lot of students in theater who go to what are the National Unified Auditions, which is a great idea. It's New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, and some schools add in Las Vegas and San Francisco. But there are thousands of kids there auditioning, and basically they go from room to room, and the colleges are all together. The largest number of colleges is in Chicago, so ArtsBridge always goes to Chicago, and but it is a scene, and kids generally are going to see a lot of people they know. So my little tip is, don't stay at the Palmer House in Chicago because
crowded.
You know what, do your audition. Don't do any more than 2 a day, and stay somewhere else.
Oh,
that's what I recommend.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Now, how is the visual arts application process different than performing arts?
So visual arts students are fortunate to have the National Portfolio Days, which are really terrific and all around the country. And they come in and they get to show their portfolio to the deans of admissions or somebody on their visual arts faculty and get an opinion or get some feedback. The only issue I have with that is you are going to see very long lines and you're not going to get a whole lot of time in the feedback department. Okay. So I think if a family works with somebody like us, then we will have somebody write up a report and tell the families what they think and what needs to be added or taken away, or are there enough mediums, in terms of, is there enough black and white, is there enough drawing, is there enough painting? So we work with the families to make sure it really is as it should be for that particular school. So that is very important. And then the second thing that's very important for our visual artists is, do you go to a foundation program, which is a school where you take a little bit of everything the first year and then you focus after that, or do you just go in, boom, for your major, whether it's painting, sculpture, drawing, right away? The other thing that's interesting with graphic design is some visual arts schools are no longer considering that a visual art. It's not really in their department, and some are. So for students hoping to do graphic design and maybe some other medium as well, they need to make sure they're in a program that offers both.
Oh, wow. Super helpful.
Yeah.
What do you find most rewarding about your work, Halley?
What I find rewarding about my work is I love the relationship. I love my families. I get to do every day the favorite parts of my job when I worked in larger institutions. Like, I'm not a huge meeting person. I think my favorite book is Death by Meeting or something. Because I think when you're sitting around with 20 or 30 people, it's very difficult to get anything done. So I get to do what I love every day. I love the teaching aspect of working with these families and showing them what's out there. I think because I'm a mother and I have this nurturing quality about me, I understand that these are kids, that we have to remember these kids are 16, 17, 18 years old. They don't have the breadth of experience that we have, and they're sensitive, and they worry about rejection, and if you ask any of them their fears, it's like they're not going to get in anywhere, which is something that I take to heart, because not that that's ever happened with us, but I think rejection is huge for kids. And if a parent doesn't listen to me and has their kid apply to 19 schools, their child apply to 19 schools, they're going to get 16 rejections, sure, likely. So, getting to know the families, and even 3, 4, 5 years out, I still have families that get in touch and just say that they got so much out of the experience. I just had somebody call me from about 3 years ago today, just that she still can't believe how helpful it was to have a one-on-one. I mean, it's a luxury. It really is to have a one-on-one with their child, but I try as much as I can to do things like this. I speak at a lot of schools. I do a fair amount of pro bono work just so, we can kind of spread this out and teach everybody, because there's no way the guidance counselors have the time nor would know everything there is to know about the performing and visual arts field.
No way. So the bridge from those teenage years to the young adulthood is so exciting, but it's confusing period in one's life. So to any teen who may be listening today to us, what piece of advice would you have for him or her kind of transitioning?
Transitioning from high school to college, perhaps?
To college.
Yeah. They should realize that they're so not alone with being confused and nervous and excited and, number one. Number two, this is 4 years of what hopefully will be a really long, wonderful life. Nothing is etched in stone. If you go somewhere and it's not for you, don't decide in the first few weeks, because it's just, you got to go through a semester or a year to know if the college is right for you. And also realize that, you're not going to have everything in one school. You're just not. There are a lot of parents especially who worry about, well, if the student goes and majors in painting, or they major in the violin, or they major in contemporary dance, what are they going to do when they get out? I don't want them to be a starving musician or starving artist, which is a phrase that I really don't like. First of all, these students are remarkable. If they're not going to do what they were trained to do, these students have so much so much resilience and stick-to-itiveness and understand what it's like to get up there and to have to speak about themselves and be evaluated up and down and rejection and all that. So I think these students in the arts are completely remarkable. I also think that we can't always have these fallbacks. Sometimes I did this. I left Boston Conservatory. Some people thought I was crazy, and I went out on my own. You know what? Sometimes you just got to take a chance. So if you feel like a college feels right to you and you're a little scared, that's okay. We learn a lot by being scared, and you always find your student group at the school, hopefully. There's some students who worry that, everybody's going to be nerdy, or everybody's going to be so much better than I am, or everybody's going to be gay and I'm not, and what will I do? And there's no everybody. Every school, is a mixture of things. Some parents think, oh, I don't want to go to this school because it was just rated the #1 party school. I mean, if that's what you do, that's what you do, but it doesn't mean that everybody is partying at that particular school. So you have, just like people find their niche work, just like I found my niche here, you find your niche in college, and it goes very, very quickly, but it's not, you're 21 when you're finished. That's all. Right. And the last thing I'll say about this is there are students who decide they have a BFA or a Bachelor of Fine Arts or a BM, Bachelor of Music, that they want to then go to medical school, that this isn't for them. Well, guess what? You don't have to go back to college. You can do a 1.5 year of your, science pre-med course or pre-law, whatever, and then apply to medical school. You don't have to go back for 4 years. So sometimes people think you can only, once you start in the arts, that's it for life. I went to Sarah Lawrence College and got a Bachelor of Arts degree, and then I went to Boston University, a Bachelor of Music. It doesn't matter, and sometimes you're more interesting of a candidate if you don't line up perfectly well.
Wow. That was amazing. Well, thank you so much, Halley.
You're welcome.
You clearly created a wonderful program, and you're meant to do what you're supposed to, you're meant to be doing what you're doing at ArtsBridge. You're helping talented students all over the world learn the tools to help them achieve their dreams. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. It was a pleasure, and feel free to call on me again anytime.
Awesome. And so this wraps up our show today with the founder of ArtsBridge, Halley Shefler. To learn more about the amazing work Halley and her award-winning staff does for students, please visit www.artsbridge.com. Thank you for joining us on Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration.